everyone, and welcome yet to another live series interview. These are ongoing live series teaching we have here while I'm Harpenden. My name is Siam.
My name is Giovanni, and if you not have watched the teachings and the interviews, you can find them at YWAM Harpenden Facebook page, YouTube, and podcast.
Today, I am so excited to have my friends Michael and Jessica Green speaking to us on relationships. Welcome, guys. I'm so excited to have you guys here with us. So just so the viewers know a bit about yourselves, can you just tell us just your passion and just your journey together?
Well, obviously we're passionate about each other, Sion. We've been married 18 years. We've been in YWAM for the last 12 years. Previous to that, my occupation before that was acting. So I love acting, communication, all those sort of things. And when I met Michael, you were involved in politics.
Politics, and then was involved in business. But prior to that, I grew up in YWAM. So I am very much a missionary YWAM kid as well.
And we have 3 children. So we have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a soon-to-be 10-year-old.
Oh. And Jessica, do you still do some of your acting a bit?
I don't do any stage acting right now, which is what I was trained for, and which I love. But I do learn scripture with the purpose of speaking it out, as a sort of communicating it out, capturing back the orality of scripture. I love to do that.
That's awesome, guys.
Great. Michael and Jessica, it's really great to have you guys with us today. And I think this topic of relationship is just abroad, just because people normally think when it comes to relationship into romantic relationship. But I think this it's more than just into it. I think it's like more what you guys share in your teaching. You go first before into the relationship with God, and then through that know yourself and love yourself so that you can love others. Could you define a little bit more into the topic of defining relationship?
Sure. I think you're right. I think often when people think about relationships, they immediately jump to romantic relationships, and that makes up a lot of the stories that we see in the media, that we experience all around us all the time. The drama of life often comes from these romantic relationships, but it's only a small part, as you rightly said.
It is also often the most interesting part.
That's true.
We talk about it a lot, don't we? And I can remember at youth group, whenever there was a talk on relationships, it would be packed out. So it's something we're just, I think it's interesting.
It is very interesting.
But the reality is, we are relational beings because of God, because He is a relational being. You have the Trinity right from the very start. You have relationship, and as humans, we are created for that, and we're invited into relationship first and foremost with the Trinity. So our relationship with God is of utmost importance, and we ignore it to our detriment in all the other areas of life. So we have that area, as you said, and how we relate to ourselves. That's equally important. How do I see myself? What's the view that I have of me? Am I kind to me? Am I really unkind to me? What are the narratives, the things going on inside of my head that inform how I see myself? And then out of that, then you have relationships with everybody around you, and obviously not just the romantic relationships, but relationships with siblings, with parents, with friends, with colleagues. Relationships, it's potentially is one of the largest topics you could think about because it impacts every single area of our lives.
Oh, that's really good. For myself, like you just said, relationship is so broad. So, we're all Christians here. What is romantic relationship in a Christian perspective? What does that look like?
So what is a romantic relationship? A healthy romantic relationship look like from a biblical perspective?
Yeah.
It looks like.
Which one's going to tackle this?
I think, the first thing that springs to mind is that it, and this is going to take a bit of explaining, is that it looks upright. So we're primarily designed with, I think we would probably agree that we're primarily designed for relationship, but that our needs, God said that He would meet all our needs, every single one of our needs. So if you look back to the picture of Adam and Eve in the garden, everything was provided. They had food, water, where they didn't need clothing, I mean, they were naked. They had shelter. They had everything. They had purpose. They had destiny, and they had deeply satisfying relationships with God, starting in God, and with one another. And I think relationships are at their healthiest. When we talk about a biblical or Christian relationship, what are we talking about? We're talking about God's design. And God's design will always be the very best.
Yeah.
Because he designed everything at its very best. And it all got broken in the fall, but he's always calling us back to that best. And so I think the first thing that springs to mind when you say that is, or the primary thing is, that it's upright, that we're getting our needs met from God, our sense of identity, I suppose. Was that?
Yeah, so with a healthy romantic relationship, you're not in it for what you can get out of it.
Right.
You know, if you go into a relationship with, I have a deficit, I have a need, you know, that needs filling out, whether that's an emotional need, you know, I don't really know who I am, I need you to tell me I'm okay, or seeking to get physical needs met in the other person. Yeah. Whenever we go into a relationship from that place of deficit, invariably it ends in it being unhealthy, and none of us are perfect. You know, so you know that's the ideal, that's the standard that we're looking for. So when we talk about a biblical romantic relationship, I think Jessica's right. You know, the primary thing is, I'm not going into it in terms of what I can get out of it, but what can I give? How can I ensure that the person on the other side is growing more in their walk with God? I'm not doing anything to compromise that or or pull them away from the relationship with the Lord.
So you need to love yourself before you can love.
Yeah, and I think it's. Sorry,
No, that's good. Yeah, go on.
I think it's knowing that as we're deeply rooted and established in our relationship with the Lord, and knowing who we are in Him, it's from that place that actually is the place that we can deeply love ourselves. Yeah. That's the foundation of healthy relationship, and so from that place, then we really are free to love. And then I think it's calling. You know, our purpose, you know, is to call the best out in each other. And to point one another to Jesus, and to call each other to the higher best, and to believe in one another, and to champion one another, because it's not, you know, we're meant to do that. Whether we're married or not, you know, we need people in our lives who are doing that, who are calling the best out and going, no, you can do it, and I'm behind you, and I love you, and by the way, that's a bit out of order.
And so, I mean, and that's true of every relationship. I think where I would say, if you're looking at a romantic relationship, really we're saying that there's intentionality here. Yeah. So, you know, we live in a kind of, you know, hookup culture. Yeah. And where a romantic relationship, well, for as long as it suits me, I'll be in this. And it's about me, and when it no longer suits me and I no longer feel it, then I'm out of here. And I'd say that the big difference that we would see is actually if I was pursuing, as I did pursue a relationship with Jessica, a romantic relationship, there was intentionality. Said, actually, I see you as someone that potentially I want to spend the rest of my life with. So we are entering a specific period of time where we're working that out. Are we called to the same things? Are we heading in the same direction? Are we compatible in that sense? Do we bring out the best in each other? Is there joy? Is there life in this relationship? And obviously, ultimately, the answer to that for both of us was yes, in which case, you know, the logical conclusion was marriage. It wasn't, well, I'm going to be with you and we're going to hang out, I'm going to get my needs met and get companionship and my sexual needs gratified for as long as it suits me, and then when I tire of that, I'm going to go on somewhere else. Yeah. So I would say it's a very different thing, certainly to what we see in popular culture around us.
And just so that we don't look like, you know, we're perfect and pure as the driven snow. No. Just
remember, we're on camera, we have to be perfect.
I was like, I feel like we're perfect.
Just to, I mean, our dating relationship was a very long story we're not gonna go into in any detail, but it is a story of two halves. So when we dated the first time, I don't even remember how long it was for, maybe
6-9 months.
Yeah, it's under a year. And we were deeply passionate about each other. We there was always a thing, you know, there was always that thing. But our relationship was actually very unhealthy because I didn't really know who I was. I didn't have a strong sense of my identity, and I kept looking to Michael to tell me who I was, and, you know, am I okay, and do you love me, and if you love me enough, and am I attractive enough, and Michael's sort of default in life is to think that he is okay. And so he thought he was strong enough to make me okay. And actually what that amounted to was it wasn't, us both being upright. It was me bending into him going, help, help, tell me who I am. And it was him going, no, I can, I'm strong enough. And of course, what eventually happened was that
I worked out that I wasn't strong enough.
and I bled him dry of his life, and actually our relationship imploded. And we then totally broke up. And then in a sort of convoluted way, the Lord brought us back together. We came back together, but there'd been a real period of growth in both our lives.
Yeah.
And so when we came back together, we then had this experience of having a relationship that was very different. And I can remember, like, all of a sudden our physical relationship wasn't so much of a struggle. We were still, like, into each other. Well, you know, that hadn't changed. But it was now more important that he didn't feel bad in the morning. He didn't wake up going, oh, I don't. It was more important to me that he felt good about himself than me getting my sense of, am I attractive enough? And I think the same was for you. So our physical relationship was very easy to keep within healthy boundaries until we got married the second time. So
Married for the first time, just want to point that
oh yeah,
out.
no, married for the first time.
Wow.
We've only been married once to each other.
Okay.
Or
It's
anybody
good.
else.
That we know.
A few other engagements along the way.
Well,
but
it is very key that, like, you really need to know yourself, because for myself, like, when I was in a relationship, 4 years relationship, I thought, like, I knew myself, I'm ready for this. But I realized when I got into that relationship, it was toxic, because I felt like my ex could fulfill all my needs and, like, all these things. And it just became so toxic. And I just think it's so key first to know your identity in Christ, and that you are created in his image. And I felt like, oh, you know, my ex can feel that and tell me that I'm beautiful. And I thought, like, I couldn't live with my life without him. And it's just, and I think that's so
That's exactly
codependent
right.
like that.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Ooh.
You're on it, yeah.
Relationships. That's good.
That's really good as well. Just like you mentioned, how it's important to love yourself before you love each other. But how can we keep growing in loving God so that we can love ourselves and then after love each other?
I think Michael's already mentioned part of it is intentionality. That we choose to be very intentional in growing in our relationship with the Lord, growing in healthy relationship with ourselves, but then healthy relationship with. So we are married. So healthy relationship with Michael means that I intentionalize time with him. I actually intentionalize. We really intentionalize kindness in our relationship. From the very beginning, because we realize that I'm the emotional one, and he tends to be the more steady one. But my emotions would explode. I mean, they still can. It's not, you know. But I learnt very early on. He taught me very early on that when my emotions exploded, it created a bomb, and lots of stuff needed to be then cleaned up. And so from very early on, for me, it was actually really intentionalizing being kind. And so our relationship, we've set ourselves a standard in our relationship where this was on the third night of honeymoon, when I'd exploded over something, and Michael the next day explained to me how much that wounded him. And so we made an agreement, which has been probably the saving grace in our marriage, but I think it's a saving grace in any relationship. And that is that it is never okay to be rude and unkind.
Yeah.
Never, ever okay to be rude and unkind. Now, have we ever been rude and unkind to each other since? Absolutely. But it's a standard that we have that we can always come back to. So how do we carry on? I mean, that's just a really practical one, but how do we carry on growing in our love for one another and growing in love, in healthy relationship with our children and with those who are around us? It's, I think, for me, it's kindness.
And there's a law in the universe, the law of entropy, which basically says over time things will tend towards chaos. And that is true in terms of relationships as much as anything else. You know, if you aren't intentional about a relationship, it drifts apart over time. You know, things don't get better just by themselves. You know, relationships don't get better just by accident. You have to put time and effort, and a lot of times it goes against how you may feel. You know, I remember often, especially in the first year of marriage, times going, this is just really hard. I quite like to walk out the door now. And
Oh.
and at times, and I remember going, I'm never going to do that. Everything within me says, actually, and of course I was going to come back, but
For sure.
but I just, this is just really hard. So I just want to leave. I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to walk out the door. Or it could be with your children.
He verbalised that a few times. I'm not walking out the door. He was talking to himself.
You feel
Talking to
want
himself.
to, but you're like, no.
But it's the same thing with children. There are times when you'd want to just kind of yell at them and shake them, and you have to control your feelings. You know what? There's a better way here. How do I respond in a way that's loving, that's kind, remembering I'm the adult. Or it could be a relationship with a parent or with siblings, whatever. There's often times where it's just easier to walk away. It's just easier to go, you know what? I don't need you in my life, and we create distance.
Yeah.
And without effort, without working things through, distance will always happen in relationships. You have to intentionalize walking together. And I think what we've found through the years in all of our relationships, our closest friends are the ones that actually we've gone through really hard times with. And we've pressed on through, and we've resolved issues. We've talked about things. We haven't swept things under the carpet.
So good.
It's
That's
so easy
cute,
to say, we're just not going to talk about this.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, one of the other things we decided early on in life is we would never sweep anything under the carpet. There would never be any no-go areas where we just simply can't talk about it because it's too hard. Are there hard areas to talk about? Absolutely. But there's nothing that's off limits.
I think I had to thank my parents for that, because growing up with 10 siblings, we always talked about the issue right away instead of sweeping it under a rug. And that's so key for every relationship, because I don't do well with conflicts, and it's just, it just builds up. And I think that's a healthy relationship and everything.
I want to just add though that just with that, Michael touched on it, with that this isn't just about marriage relationships or boyfriend, girlfriend, but it's actually, I think one of the things that we were taught really early on in our 20s was being intentional with friendship. And we've chosen to be really intentional with a few. You can't be intentional with loads, so you've got to decide who you're going to be intentional with. And we're so grateful for those ones that we've been intentional with. But no, as Michael said, there hasn't been one friendship that hasn't taken a real shaking, where there's been something that's been, probably multiple things that have been difficult, and we've had to talk about and work through misunderstandings or hurts, so it's having, healthy relationships is having a desire for a healthy relationship. We could not for a second put our hand up and say, no, our relationships are already great. They're always undergoing stress and strain, and every time there's opportunity for us to fall and fail, and we do.
Yeah.
But it's picking ourselves back up again and saying, I am sorry, I made a mistake, I fell, I was unkind, or I was out of order, or I believed the worst in you and I didn't stop, or no, I forgive you, or would you forgive me? And that applies to every relationship that we're in.
Wow.
And I think just relationship is not just about receiving, but it's also about giving.
For sure.
Right.
And so that Jessica can love herself, or Michael can love himself, it's, I think, your partner to encourage the person to see those things that you love about the person, and through that the person will love herself, because he knows that your partner are saying those things, and how important it is in a relationship for you to keep encouraging each other, so that we can keep just growing in love to each other.
That's absolutely right.
It's so true. So relationship takes a lot of work, and that's why sometimes, do you feel ready for it? So my next question is, so I think for myself, like I said previously, I thought I was ready for a relationship, but then turns out, for me, God knows me better than I know myself. And how do you know when you feel like you're ready for a relationship? Or are you ever ready for a relationship?
I wonder if it's a little bit like having kids. You're never actually ready. You've never got it all sorted out. We certainly weren't sorted out before we entered into a romantic relationship and then marriage. So I think there is an element, you can't. It's always a leap of faith. There's always an element of I'm putting myself out here. I could be hurt. I could hurt in return. And we make mistakes. But again, I would bring it back to what we were talking about earlier on in terms of that deficit. And if you know that there's parts in your life where you're really needing to be filled up, you need to look to the Lord to be filled up, rather than saying, where's the person that's going to meet my needs? Where's the person that's going to fill this lack of sense of being that I have? So whilst we're never all together, whilst we're never fully sorted, I think Jessica alluded to it, the first time that we dated, we were really unhealthy in ourselves, and that led to a really unhealthy relationship. So same people, but a bit more healed up 3 years later, it was an entirely different thing.
We're at least two people on different trajectories.
Yeah.
Whereas before we'd been just headed towards this sort of vortex of unhealthiness, and at least we were just now set on a different trajectory, so we certainly weren't there, but
so
we had more chance of survival.
Whether you're married, or you're in a romantic relationship, or you're single, or you never want to get married, whatever it is, we should always be saying, how do I get more healthy? How do I look to get my identity from the Lord? And that's where it comes back to kind of where we started, Giovanni. That's why our relationship with our Heavenly Father is so important, because it's out of that place of being filled up, of knowing who I am, knowing my identity, then I'm in a better place to be able to be in a healthy relationship with someone else, to be able to stand upright instead of leaning one way in or both in towards each other.
I think I would add to that there's an element where that desire for a relationship, because we're talking in this question romantic relationship, that desire is really normal. It's really natural. It's actually just the foundation of who we're made, because we're made, it goes back to what we said right in the beginning, we're made in God's image, which means we're primarily relational. He was primarily relational, the Trinity.
And we want intimacy.
We want it, we crave it, we long for it. But I would say that marriage will never complete us. A boyfriend or a girlfriend will never complete us. Another partner will never complete us. And that's maybe another way of saying, how upright are we, is actually understanding that. The great sadness is that many marriages are some of the loneliest places you could be, and marriage is not the answer. Our identity and who we are is finding out who we are in Christ, and then really living out of that place of greatness. That's where we become the fullness of who we are. But that desire for a relationship is just inbuilt. So so in that sense, we're always ready for a relationship.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that, like, marriage doesn't complete us, because so often, like, we can think, only if I get married, everything will be solved. It's like,
and I would say to anybody who was thinking about getting married, never settle. Never, ever settle for anything other than the best.
That's good.
Because it's just not worth it. The lie is that the romance will just sweep all the pain and the sadness away, and it will be wonderful and rosy and happy, and we'll live in fairyland forever. And you just don't. Relationships are really hard. So unless you really are with the best, and you never know that for certain. But for me, I can remember just going, how would I ever know who the right person is? And my wise old mother said, "Oh, darling, you'll just know that you know that you know." And I went, "Well, that's not helpful, thank you."
How do I know?
But there's a sense where there's that deep sense of, there are so many areas and things I don't know about in the future. There's so much I can't say what's going to happen. And yes, for sure, there's going to be difficulties in the short, but actually there's a deep sense of yes. There's a deep sense of, I think with this guy, I can face it. Whatever we do, we'll face it.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good.
I don't know if that makes
sense. No, that's really good.
That's really good. And I think when it comes to relationship, it's about you getting to know your partner as well. But not just into relationship, but as well into marriage as well. You're always getting to know your wife and your husband as well. So, and I think my parents as well, they speak into relationships, and they always mention that they still get to know things like until now. So what's one of the things that you guys have learned from each other? Like any perspective, how is one of the things that you have learned from each other that's like funny or just any ways?
There's lots of things like that. I think for me, I've often said I owe any emotional intelligence that I have, I owe to my wife. So I think I have through her prizing stuff out of me, realized more about who I am, and been able to put language to feelings that I perhaps hadn't even realized that I had. So I think being able to talk more at a heart level instead of just at a head level, which is my tendency, has been a big area for me.
Way to go, Jess. It's good.
And I think probably for me, it's been, I mean, I'm so grateful for Michael's steadiness. I'm so grateful that he's a thinker and not a feeler like me, because my feelings go like this. And one of the things I've had to learn, and unfortunately I didn't learn it till later in life, until my 30s, that the thought was sort of presented to me that perhaps my feelings don't always tell the truth. And so if they don't always tell the truth, perhaps I don't always have to believe them.
Yes.
Or that they're real and they need validating, but
they have to act on them.
They don't have to act on them, and but they also don't necessarily reflect truth.
Yeah.
And Michael
That's
has
good.
been such an important part of that journey for me, of just being able to bring me back and help me negotiate that with huge patience and kindness, walked with me so patiently through so much of that learning, and then with that, I think, so it's the steadiness, but also his intentionality. He's unbelievably intentional, and has taught me to be the same, because I don't think I was. I don't think I was at all.
Wow. I think that knowing both of you guys for a bit, I see what you both said. I can see that you both have helped each other in these areas. So can you guys elaborate on the common thought that most people have, there's that soulmate? Because, I mean, I hope I don't get myself in trouble here. I don't necessarily believe soulmates. So what's your thoughts?
That's a really good question. And to a certain extent, you have to go back to your theology. And so this is opinion rather than because you can interpret the Bible in different ways. Okay, so without going into the long argument, there are those that would believe it's all mapped out.
Right.
God sees it all being the end, and we're on this kind of journey of discovering something that's already been preordained. And there are others that have a more open view, that God works with us in the choices that we make. I tend towards the latter, and as a result, for me, if there was just one person, well, what if they didn't choose good choices? What if they, if we have true free will, then they can do something else. And so if I'm sat here waiting for my soulmate, but sadly they've decided to live in Australia, what happens then? I've missed my soulmate.
Exactly.
That's my one shot, done. So, I have the view that certainly there are people that would be a better match for you, probably a much, much, much better match than others. And certainly in Jessica described, right when we first met, there was a spark between us. There was something that was, for me, I was like, this isn't just another interesting person. So I'd say
I was the only person in the room, actually, as far as he was concerned.
Oh, really?
Yes, she exaggerates. But so there, I think it's important. There's a sense of there's something really special about this person. As Jessica said, it's not settling. Well, I guess this is it. I guess this is as good as it's going to get. But at the same time, you still have to work at it. I think there's nothing. If you have this idea, there's just one person for me. You get in a relationship, you get married, and then they disappoint you, and then they do something that really hurts you, winds you, whatever it might be, and then you start going, maybe I married the wrong person. Yeah. Maybe my soulmate's still out there, and that becomes a long descent into unhappiness that will usually end in divorce. So as far as I'm concerned, once you've made your choice, that is the person.
Yeah.
So Jessica is the only person for me. That's because we made that choice, we made that covenant.
Yeah, that's good.
Want to add to that?
I think you said it really well. I do think I said it before, but I would say to anyone, don't settle for anything less than the best. And what I mean by that is not outward appearance. It's not you got to have fast cars or whatever.
Fancy house and all
Mm. It's about, is this person bringing out the best in me? Do they call me to Jesus? Do they release me to be the best that I can ever be? And can I do that for them? And are they committed to the same things I'm committed to? Do they have the same values? Are they committed to not sweeping stuff under the carpet? Are they committed to, for us, pursuing and loving Jesus? But I think that's what I mean by the best. I would hesitate to understand, there's no soulmate out there, so just I can make it work with anybody. Theoretically, yes, but you probably don't want to try.
Yeah.
So I think it's somewhere between the two of, no, I would totally agree. There isn't just, I don't agree with, I don't believe in the soulmate thing, but I also think we need to exercise tremendous wisdom when we're picking a life partner.
Yeah.
And part of that, I'd say, is doing it in the context of community as well.
Absolutely.
I think, again, one of the things that society and world at large told us, it's just about you and the other person. And whilst we certainly don't believe in arranged marriages, and parents, there's an element of having the input from people that we love and trust, who know us, like our parents, like our close friends, and really listening to them. I would say for some relationships that we know of that have gone badly wrong and have ended up in divorce, as their friends, we kind of saw stuff from the start, and therefore being able to hear that wise counsel of others as well, and because we get blind, especially early stages of romantic relationship, you get tunnel vision, and that person is wonderful, nothing ever could possibly be wrong. This is sort of infatuation. That's not love, that is infatuation. Now it can lead to love, but when we're in that place that the other person can do no wrong, that's when we really need the counsel of others going, let's be realistic.
I think you pointed out a good point there, Michael, when you said, let's listen to the people in our lives, like our families from friends, and listen to them when they're like, oh, I'm not sure about this person, I mean, it's hard.
Yeah,
sometimes
we
when
have
you're
to make
in
the
it,
choice.
we have to make the choice. Yeah, for sure.
But we don't do that in an isolated bubble.
For sure, yeah.
And coming to that topic as well, it's just like to clarify a few things. For sure, men and women, they are different, but not just into physically, but also to the way that they express their self as well. And I think I am married as well, and I have been married for 1 year and 6 months. And I think
not to Sion.
Not to
No.
Sion. No, definitely not to Sion.
No, oh my gosh.
Yes, not to Sion, but to Sarah, my lovely wife.
She's gorgeous.
She's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, she is. But I think when I was single, if I want to go and play soccer or hear football, I would just go and play, and I had no problem with that. But as soon as I step into marriage, my friend of mine will say, hey, let's go play soccer. And then I say, oh yeah, I'm coming. And I just leave the house and I go. And then after a few minutes, I forgot. I forgot to tell my wife that I went to play soccer. And then when I get home, she's upset with me because I did not communicate well where I was. So could you guys describe to us a little bit what would be effective communication between the relationships and couples as well?
And you're right, Giovanni, we have tendencies, so as men and women, we have tendencies. That doesn't define us, and it doesn't say that, as a man, I'm always, the logical one with, less emotional intelligence and tending to independency, and we have those stereotypes, and I'll say, so this isn't stereotypes, this is talking about tendencies. And often, as men, certainly our tendency can be to, if we hear a problem, to try and fix it. And I think when it's come to us in communication, for me, it's been knowing when Jessica is wanting me just to hear her, which is 99.9% of the time, rather than step in and try and fix it, which is probably 0.1% of the time.
Because I just want to be
around.
validated.
Yeah.
I just need my emotions validated, because my emotions are so big that I just need to have them heard, and then my emotions can order and my thoughts can order, and I can come to my own solution. Because I'm quite
Amazing.
clever. I know.
I think I would say sometimes we can expect the person on the other side to be a mind reader and to know what you need at all times. And in the heat of it, that's just going to happen. But where we can say to the other person, hey, I really need you to hear me at the moment, or actually I want you to celebrate with me. This has happened. I don't want you to critique it or anything else. I just want you to celebrate. Or actually, here's an idea, here's a thought, this is what I'm thinking about. What are your thoughts? Collaborate with me on this. So there are different, if we can help the other person actually know the style of communication, it at least gives them their heads up.
Yeah.
18 years into marriage, I'm still not a mind reader, and I still often get it wrong. But just being kind to the other person, rather than jumping in with, "Oh, you always try and fix me."
I think giving each other the best possibility of winning, which actually means educating one another in a funny kind of way. It means that instead of expecting Michael or other people who are close to me, like a sister-in-law or a really good friend, instead of expecting them to just know how to communicate with me or treat me when they see me, I actually might take responsibility and say, do you know what? It would really help me when I come to you with something like this. Could you just listen? And for us, we've had many very funny conversations with, and we've learnt now.
Some not so funny.
Yeah, some really are not funny at all. But we've learnt now that we kind of, if I have to say to Michael, babes, I need to talk. Yeah. And that usually means, especially if he's been away, say we've been apart for a couple of weeks and we come back together, he comes back from a trip, we actually need to go for a 2-hour walk.
And you come back from a trip.
Or I come back from a trip, thank you. We actually need to go for a 2-hour walk. And actually the purpose of that walk is for me to talk.
That's
and
awesome.
To listen. We're now clear on our roles.
And then at the end, and he goes, and then he feels like magic. He feels like there are times he goes, I'm just so good at this.
Wait, do you communicate that to him when you
Oh
go
yeah,
for a walk?
I will say to him, babes, I need to talk, and he'll go, okay, so is this one of those walks? I go, yeah. And so then we talk, I talk, and I talk, and then I'm going, and he listens, and he goes, and then I'll have to say to him, babes, I'm talking to a black hole, I'm not hearing anything, and he goes,
I'm listening. I'm listening.
What I hear you say is, and I have to learn to be kind and go, okay, you're really trying here. Thank you for trying. Thank you for trying. But you know what?
I'm not an emotional pygmy.
As I take responsibility to tell him what I need, and he has the humility, and he really does walk in humility in this, to go, okay, I'm going to give it a go, and we're going to try. So then communication, and actually we've got friends who, we know a number of friends whose emotional thinking makeup is exactly the opposite, where it's actually the guy who's the feeler, and it's the wife who is who's the thinker, and they, it works exactly the same. That she would have a tendency to fix.
But if we sort of zoom back out again, because this is about relationships in the broader sense, not just marriage and romantic relationships. I think the other really key thing in communication is really seeking to understand what the other person is communicating first, and it's people talk about it all the time, but it's really hard to do, because so often we're either listening because we want to respond, so we're listening to, and we've already latched onto something you said, I've already thought about what I'm going to say, or we're just trying to get our side of the argument across. And instead of getting into that back and forth, going, what's behind that? Asking really good questions. And you see Jesus doing that consistently, in the Gospels, is he doesn't get trapped often because he asks questions, because he's what's underneath this, and we can do that too. What's this person really? What's driving the behavior? Why are they angry? What's flared up? Why is it fear? What's happened? And developing a place of safety with the other person, where they feel safe to then communicate. Then you start to really reach each other. And then you have communication going on, because otherwise you just got two people monologuing at each other, and usually you end up further apart rather than closer together. So going and saying, first really seeking to understand, but also what's going on under the words they're saying, what's behind what they're saying, because if you can get to that, then you'll communicate.
And that really takes us taking ourselves out of the center of the focus. I think a lot of the time, I like to be the center. I like to be the focus. This is about me. This is about my emotions and how you've impacted me and what you've done wrong. And that could often be, especially in times of tension, the way I would naturally come towards a conversation, rather than, okay, let's just get me out of the way. What's going on? How can I love you? How can I take the focus off me and onto you, and
so good.
and love?
Wow, so
Oh.
good. Yeah, I guess it's been just so great. And yeah, I think for Sion as well. We just love to hear the topics that you guys brought, and just their answer was just so easy to understand, and just brought, you made this topic of huge into very small and very easy to understand. So thank you so much for
Thank
you
you.
guys, and thanks so much for the opportunity again for you guys to be part with us today.
Yes, thank you so much, you guys. I honestly could see here. I have more questions, but I can find you later. I feel like I'm ready for relationship now.
Our work here is done.
Yeah, your work is done. I'm good. My parents will be so excited. No, thank you so much, you guys. Honestly, I've heard you guys speak on this a bit, and I mean, I see your relationships, and obviously, you know, there has been some ups and downs, but you guys, I think what you guys talk on and stuff like that, and you really demonstrate it. So thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having
Thank
us. Thank you.
And thank you guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed this topic as well of relationship. I did, and it was so great. And if you have not watched this, remember that you can find this at YWAM Harpenden Facebook page, YouTube, and podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank
See you
you.
guys. Bye.